Morning, Ajahn. It's good to see you again. Two questions. Firstly, you talked about creating an atmosphere in the room by going to places regularly. And I know when I go to Amravati, I feel that. But I have doubt in my mind. Years ago, I did a physics degree. So I'm like, well, physics says we're just quarks and particles. So, how can there be some sort of atmosphere generated? Because so is there anything that you're aware of, or maybe what Buddha said, that can explain what this energy is, or is it just something I just need to trust?
Well, one thing is your own perceptions. Like if you go somewhere regularly and you experience good things there, like peace, good feelings, peaceful states of mind, even though they'll partly be stimulated by the place, the people you meet there, the people who are there, and the place, the way the place is set up, how it looks visually, and just the kind of setting of the place. But if you personally have experienced peace, happiness, good things before, maybe a number of times, then the physics of it, I guess, the science of it is that your mind is going to be more inclined to think and experience those same states again next time you go. You remember, oh, this is where I was peaceful before. This is where I met good people before. It will be much more natural for your mind to experience those states, having experienced them before. As I said, also perhaps the way the place is, the physical location, physical place, if you say you have a Buddha statue in a place, the statue is, we know it's just elements of nature, it could be metal or stone or whatever it's made from, but it's been carved by somebody with love, respect, and maybe that's reflected in the art of the actual statue, the way it looks. It's also, a statue is something that draws many good mental states out of the people who come into contact with it. They see it, some people may bow, or they meditate, or they have certain good thoughts come up when they're in the presence of the statue. So it's not necessarily that there's some special halo of energy or aura of energy around the statue, although people often feel there is. There's also just many good things have repeatedly happened in the presence or nearby that statue, say. So when we come into that presence, it can stimulate very quickly, maybe very naturally, very quickly, very skillful thoughts in our own mind. So it's still cause and effect, and there's still, you could sort of say, a chain of reaction, cause and effect, but those people who are more maybe emotional, they might go more explain it more in the sort of mysterious ways, like, oh, there's just this great feeling there, and maybe there's some truth to that as well, but that's very hard to prove or put into words. But I think you can explain it in a more scientific way and just say a cause and effect. It's how your mind is in that place or in that situation. So, for example, I was saying, like in your home, if you have the corner where you meditate regularly, you just go to that corner, you say, I want to meditate today, and you go to that place. Sure, you may have all kinds of confusion or suffering in your mind from other things, but it's like a one step up, as it were. You're just a little bit more closer to peace because the perception of peace, mindfulness, the Buddhist teachings that you've heard or thought about before will come into your mind a little bit quicker, I would say, because of the perception that you have. Oh, this is my place for practice. It helps. It's a helpful aid to the practice.
It's really helpful. And then my second question, which is really unrelated, when you were talking about the story about the unskillful durian fruit seller, just as so just, and it's all right, I might just say good evening early, though it's morning here. Anyway, so I mean, personally, my family, I can't eat durian, whereas my family love it. but instead of like trying to get the teaching of it, my mind was going, oh, how do we help this person? Or he must have inner trauma from the past and blah blah blah. Versus trying to apply it to me. And then also, I have a friend. You talked about meditation helping with wholesome states. I have a friend who's going into depressive modes, and just trying to find external things to fix inside. I've suggested he seeks professional medical counseling help. But so my mind has an inclination of trying to think as you're speaking, oh, I should have that person come and see it, have that, versus apply it to me, firstly. But then secondly, with my friend, he doesn't want to come to any Buddhist talks or anything. And I think I'm going to not stop talking to him about it. How do I be a skillful friend to someone who's in that situation? So yeah, so trying to help people and A, focus on me, and B, the people that are friends, how do I help them? I don't know if that question makes any sense at all, Ajahn.
Yeah. Well, one of the points of that little story about the durian farmer was that he changed over a number of years and became much more greedy and then negative towards other people. And he did have friends who tried to point this out, but they weren't successful. And they felt that this was a sort of culmination. He did something a bit foolish. He was perhaps too old to climb to the top of a tree, and he got caught out, he slipped and broke, and there was a very unfortunate result. And people just felt that it's sort of a very sad story, obviously, and it would have been nice if someone could have helped him, but in his case, he didn't receive that help, or he didn't respond to any help that he did get. If you have a friend who's prone to depression or becoming depressed, well, you're a friend, you do what you can. Obviously, if they can get some proper health care, help from an expert, of course. But as a friend, you maybe just see what you can do to introduce any kind of goodness into their life. Take them out places that are peaceful, fresh air, walks in the country, or encourage them to do something that may be good to help other people in smaller or bigger ways. If you're a friend, maybe you could encourage them to do things that may take them out of their depressed, negative mood a bit. It could be very small, simple things or bigger things. It all depends on them, obviously, how much you can help them and what results come. But as a friend, that's what you do, isn't it? You just see what you can do to assist them when they're going through a bad time. But how that may be, you have to, as you say, they may not want anything to do with organized religion or Buddhism or anything. Oh, fair enough. But then that doesn't mean to say there's nothing you can do, and you can maybe take them somewhere where they can volunteer for an hour or two helping people or something, or you take them out somewhere where they can pursue some kind of hobby that they're interested in, but you just give them support to do that, because if you left them to themselves, often people, when they're depressed, they don't want to do anything. They don't even want to get out of bed in the morning, say. But as a friend, maybe you take them and do something with them, just to give them a change, just to give them some human warmth. And if it's done with a good intention, that's a really good thing to do. What results come, you can't say, but it's you just do what you can.
That's really helpful, Ajahn. So do what I can. And then on the point that I keep thinking about other people, applying everything you say to other people, not to me. I guess I'm not spotting that habit, but I'm just, any thoughts on how to, it's almost like when I read a good, now I used to read self-help books and go, here's a self-help book. Now when I read a good Dhamma book, like here's Ajahn Ambrose, I'm like, hey, here's a good book, versus keep rereading it myself. I mean, what's going on there? Something that drives me a bit crazy. My wanting to help others, conditioning. I'm not sure what you call it.
Well, it's a good thought to help others, but the best way is just to explain to them what you know, what you understand, and you might practice the Dhamma first for yourself, and you get something from it. You get some greater understanding, some feelings of peace, solve some of your problems maybe. Then when you're helping others, you just share with them what you've already found for yourself. The best way to help others is speak from your own personal experience.
Okay.
We can quote the Buddha or quote books as well, of course, but just sharing your own personal experience is probably the most useful thing when it comes to helping others. And you just share what you can within the limitations of your own body and mind and your own time and your own position, whatever you're doing in life, wherever you're at in life, you just share what you can.
Thank you. As you speak, I realize it's ego inflation why I try to share these things versus being humble. And yeah, so that's very, very helpful. Thank you very much, Ajahn. Thank you.
Okay.
Sadhu Lumpur. Next question. Greetings, Ajahn. What are the 4 pairs, 8 kinds of noble beings? I only know there are 4, Sotapanna and the next 3.
Oh, it's just for completeness. We say there's 8 kinds of noble beings because there's the path and the fruit. So for the Sotapanna, there's the one practicing the path, Magga, to stream entry, and then there's the stream entry, one who's attained stream entry, or we say stream winner. And then the next one, the once returner, the Sakatagami, there's one practicing the path, and then there's the one who's attained the fruit of once returner, and then there's non-returner practicing the path and then attain the fruit of it, and then Arahant, the Arahant, one practicing the path to Arahant and Magga, and then one who's attained the fruit, Arahata Pala. So for completeness, the Buddha talks about them as different people because these changes, stream entry, once returner, non-returner, Arahant, are very significant changes in the revolutionary changes in the mind. So you can talk about even though it may be one person over a period of time, you can talk about them as if they're a different person. There's the one practicing the path, one who's attained the fruit. The difference in the qualities of the mind, the purity of the mind, the experience of the mind is so significantly different. It's as if it's like 2 different people, even though it may be one person.
Sadhu Lumpur. We have another question here. Lumpur, as a team leader, I have to face and deal with 3 different groups of people: angry, disappointed, and depressed. I am at a loss as to how to deal with different stakeholders calmly so as to solve problems calmly. Can you give me some suggestions how I can prepare my mental state to do so?
Well, you've just said what the problem is. You have to deal with these 3 types of people, all of which are challenging. The angry ones, the depressed ones. What was the other one? Disappointed ones. Yeah. So, I mean, that's describing 3 characteristics of people's lives. They're obviously, each of those groups is going to be suffering in one way or another. So you have to be ready to meet that. So number 1, compassion, because compassion is the wish for yourself and others to be free from suffering. And so if you're meeting people who are angry or disappointed or depressed, then you're going to need lots of compassion. So you also have to have enough wisdom in your understanding of yourself and your own practice to know your limit so that you don't overextend yourself, because meeting with people who are angry and depressed drains you of your compassion. Compassion is a bit like this kind of battery charge. We talk about it like a battery charge, and every good battery gradually loses its charge, and then you have to recharge it. And our mind is like that. You reach a point sometimes in the course of your day when you're just drained and worn out and worn down by the people you meet. And then over longer periods of time, you also can get burnt out. So how do you stop getting burnt out? Well, number one, keep bringing up the inputs, cultivating compassion through meditation, and then compassion in action and compassion, but keeping the compassion for yourself as well as others. Don't forget yourself. Because if you're dealing with all these people who are very negative and unhappy, you have to keep yourself in a good space so that you can effectively help them. So you have to sometimes know your limit and say, I've done enough for the moment. I have to stop to look after my own practice, look after my own state of mind. So you have to be monitoring that, and you have to be willing to say no, or say now is the time I take time out so that I can come back and help later from a place of strength, and I can maintain my compassion. So I'd recommend a daily meditation practice on the practice of metta and karuna, or kindness and compassion. Receive teachings as well, fresh inputs. So listen to the Dhamma from whatever teachers inspire you. Practice compassion in action. So compassion is very close to patience. So be very patient with all these angry, depressed people around you, because they're going to challenge you in different ways. And the patience will help. Obviously, mindfulness, the more mindful you can be, what that will do is bring your attention back to your own body and mind in the present moment as you're interacting with these people. And if mindfulness is there, then the next thing that you can do is then have enough insight, because mindfulness supports wisdom or insight, to say, well, they're depressed, they're angry, I know that, and I wish them well, but this is their suffering, not my suffering. And that's not being selfish. It's just, when you're mindful, you're just recognizing and knowing the truth of phenomena, of any phenomena in a situation. So if you're meeting somebody who's depressed, angry, you know that, but you also know this is arising for them. This is their experience. It's not my experience. Because if you can keep the mindfulness and reflect in this way, when you go home at the end of the day, or you separate from that unhappy person, it will help you not to carry their suffering around in your heart, or make their suffering your suffering, which you probably know already, this problem, but you've got to keep practicing the mindfulness and keep reflecting. This is their suffering. I have my suffering. They have their suffering, but they're different. You don't want to be keep taking on as your own personal burden the suffering of other people, because you'll get overwhelmed over time. And so you need the mindfulness and this reflective ability to keep bringing that understanding up over and over again. It's not something you do once, you do it over and over again. This is not self, this is not me, mine, myself. I wish them well. And then you have to know your limit of how much you can help them, how much you can take on, what you can achieve. You have to be realistic. And you have to know, as you probably already know, some people you can help, some people you can't help much at all. You wish them well, but there's nothing much you can do. You have to keep these kind of reflections in your mind so that you don't get overwhelmed by all the people that you're having to deal with. If you're in a position of leadership, you're a team leader, you have to develop the qualities that will go with that. So you have to know when to be firm, when to be soft, when to praise and encourage, when to criticize, as long as it's coming from a place of understanding. You have to be go into a number of different roles. Your role has a number of different areas where you have to act and be responsible for the people you're involved with. It's not just one thing, is it? They have this wonderful term in Thailand, Ajahn Chah uses all the time. You have to find the level that is just right, or just enough. And that may vary from day to day, from person to person, mightn't it? This person needs a little bit more firmness. This person needs a little bit more softness. This person needs more time. This person can get by with less of your time. The leader role, you have to learn what is the right amount, what is just right, what is just enough for the situation, for the person. And that can vary a bit. So you have to be flexible as well. But, as you're helping others, you're also helping yourself. That's another thing to don't forget. You're teaching others or helping others, assisting others or leading others. You're also leading yourself. So never forget that. You're part of the situation as well. You're not just there organizing them, telling them what to do. You also have to tell yourself what to do.
Sadhu Lungpo. Another question. Bante, when you say we talk to ourselves, are you referring to practicing contemplation of the mind or insight meditation?
Well, you can do both together. If your mindfulness is strong enough, as you talk to yourself, these words, these concepts, these mental states are impermanent, they're not self. But maybe you're not always able to have that much insight. We have to be honest here. Sometimes we do have a clear insight, sometimes we don't. But at the same time, it's a habit, a good mental habit to get into, is to talk to yourself in a way that is encouraging you in the practice, that's going to boost your practice, motivate you, get you practicing more, just as when you talk to other people. If you talk to yourself in a very negative way, put yourself down, I am hopeless, I'm bad, I'm no good at this, I'm no good at that, well, of course, you're going to feel very deflated and don't want to do anything. And that, in the end, that's our responsibility. We're the ones who talk to ourselves, aren't we? Nobody else is talking to us inside our head. And you'll notice when you're meditating, this is going on whether you like it or not. You've got thoughts coming up. You have to ask yourself, what is the attitude I have as I'm meditating right here, right now? You may be sitting there trying to do your breath meditation, fine. But there'll be thoughts coming up, and some of those thoughts will linger, and then you'll say, oh, this is good, this is bad, I like this, don't like that, this is right, this is wrong, blah, blah, blah. It'll be going on. You have to train that as well. And a lot of our suffering is habitual suffering. When we're not mindful, the negativity comes in, and it's a habit that we may have had for years. So now we have to start introducing some better habits, maybe become more aware. That's the one thing, become more mindful. Secondly, train in more skillful reflection. And you see what's needed.
Sadhu Lungpo. Looks like we have one more question. In the Vinaya, is there training on how some monks and nuns can become team leaders, in how they interact with fellow monastics and also with the lay people and community?
Yeah, you could say the whole of the monk's discipline is that. Teaching you how, first of all, to deal with your own mental defilements of greed, anger, and delusion. Training in all kinds of virtuous and good qualities such as restraint, kindness and compassion, mindfulness. Wise reflection is a huge part of Vinaya training, learning to reflect on what you're doing, to see whether you're increasing and acting from defilement, greed, anger, and delusion, or you're abandoning defilement in different actions, body, speech, and mind. All of these qualities you're learning and training in do give you some leadership qualities, but also depends partly on your character, because some people are more introverted than others, and they prefer to shy away from leadership positions, and monks and nuns can be like that, just like anyone else. Others are more outward going and more willing to take on leadership roles. One way the Buddha defined a leader is, he'd say, as a tearer. And this word tearer means a monk or a nun who's been in the robes for 10 years or more, 10 vasas, 10 range retreats or more. Normally speaking, that's how it's defined. But actually, the Buddha used it also as a way of describing someone who's a leader, somebody who understands the Dhamma and the Vinaya. They have certain qualities established in their mind. They have mindfulness and wisdom. They have restraint, morality, virtue established. So they are, as it were, a leader. normally the word Thera refers to somebody who's been a monk or a nun for 10 years, but actually when the Buddha used the word Thera, he could also use it with a little novice who's just been ordained for a very short period of time, but has already realized the Dhamma. If such novices exist, I hope they do somewhere. Some young boy, or I guess young nun, hasn't been around very long, but they just have all the right qualities already. Maybe from past lives, that would be the Buddhist explanation. They've practiced for many lives. This life, at a young age, they become a monk or a nun, and they've straight away become a Thera, meaning they've realized the Dhamma and they're worthy of respect. There are maybe an Arya, what we call an Arya Pugala, Arya Sangha. So a little 10-year-old novice could be a Thera in that sense, or a junior monk or a junior nun who hasn't reached 10 years as a monk or a nun yet, but they may have the qualities of a Thera, so sometimes they're referred to as a Thera. That's different from a monk or a nun who wants to be a Thera, because you sometimes get them, I want to be the leader, I want to be the great teacher, the enlightened teacher, but they're not enlightened yet. And their ambition kind of runs away with them. You sometimes get that as well.
Sadhu Luang Por. Are there any more questions?
Luang Por, Ajahn.
Yeah.
Yes. Sadhu, can I ask you this question? When we realize the Four Noble Truths, realize the 4 stages of the First Noble Truth, is it suddenly or is it gradually? The 4 stages of realization for the First Noble Truth. Do we suddenly realize that, or does it come gradually? Thank you, Ajahn. The 4 stages.
I understand 4 stages. Are you referring to like the 4 kinds of enlightened beings, like Sotapanna, Sakadagami, Anagami, Arahant?
Yes, something like that. Yes. The stages, like the first stage, they realize the cause and so on, and then the second one is they practice the 8 Noble Path. Then after that, they got liberation. Then they become arahants and so on. So when they realized this during the First Noble Truth, was it suddenly or was it gradually?
Well, the first noble truth is the truth of dukkha. There is suffering.
Yes.
And the Buddha said the duty towards that truth is to clearly comprehend suffering as suffering. To know suffering as suffering, but in a detached way and with equanimity. If you're really going to know suffering for what it is, at that moment your mind has to be detached enough to know suffering, because otherwise you will be suffering, which is often how we're experiencing it. Whether the power of your mindfulness and insight and all the qualities, say the factors of enlightenment, are present enough for knowing suffering as suffering, the First Noble Truth, fully comprehending it, whether it's possible, whether you are ready, say, to attain the fruit of stream entry, well, that's another question. You would have to have all the qualities ready as you are comprehending suffering as suffering. That could be a cause for stream entry. Yes, it could. But there would have to be all the factors of enlightenment, and the practice of mindfulness would have to be well developed, and the precepts will be kept purely. There's a whole number of conditions and factors that would have to be in place. But any of these 4 noble truths, in a way, you could say they can all be a basis for insight to arise. When insight arises, it's a moment of insight, but whether that moment of insight is a moment of stream entry or changing from stream entry to once returner or not will depend on many conditions. And obviously, somebody who's not yet an Aryapugala will have many moments of insight into the Four Noble Truths over and over again. But certain qualities are becoming more established in their mind. So one day their insight is finally very completely liberating for them. But leading up to that, they're going to have many moments where they have some insight, partial insight, or weak insight, you might say. It's not quite, things have not quite gelled. It's not quite enough to remove their attachment to wrong views, to really eradicate defilement yet, but it's a step along the way.
Mm. Sadhu, Ajahn, thank you, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, that may be all the questions for tonight. Thank you everyone for participating.